So the suspense of the next RBI governor has ended. The Appointments Committee of the Cabinet has gone ahead and appointed the current Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra as the RBI's 26th governor. He will be taking over the mantle from Shaktikanta Das. Shaktikanta Das's term ends later this week. Let's understand what we know about him so far. And my colleague Ankur Mishra is joining us here in the studios in Mumbai with us. Ankur, it's an announcement that we were waiting for, and now that it's finally come through, tell us what we know about Sanjay Malhotra.
Definitely, he is 33-year experienced professional who has been in various roles. He has served in companies, he has been in the North Block as well. If you talk about his last appointment before being a Revenue Secretary, he was there in Department of Financial Secretary. Before that, he was Additional Secretary in Power. And if I tell you more, he was also CMD of REC. So his experience is varied. If you talk about his educational qualifications, he is a BTech graduate from IIT Kanpur, majoring in computer and science. He has also been to Princeton University, where he holds a master's degree in public policy. So considering all these educational qualifications, professional qualifications, I am sure PMO has considered all aspects before finally Appointment Committee of Cabinet has recommended his name, and finally now he will be the next RBI governor.
That's right. He's stepping into the hot seat, Ankur, that of RBI governor. It's happening at a time when the economy is navigating all these inflationary pressures, slowing growth, and this amidst all the global uncertainties as well. So what does his appointment mean for India's monetary policy trajectory? Will rates be cut by the MPC now under a new governor at the helm? Let's discuss all of this. Dr. Ashima Goel is joining us. She's former member of the RBI's Monetary Policy Committee and a leading voice in monetary policy deliberations. Great to have her on the phone line with us. Madhavi Arora is also here, lead economist at Emkay Global. She brings deep expertise in macroeconomic trends. And Mithali Nikore is the founder of Nikore Associates. She joins us in a bit with insights on the interplay between fiscal and monetary policies. But Ankur, this is a momentous occasion, and let's ask Dr. Ashima Goel what she makes of it. Dr. Goel, it's so good to have you with us. Tell us, in your understanding of Sanjay Malhotra and what he needs to bring to the table right now. He's got an impressive track record, like Ankur was just telling us. And he's really helped the government, upping the revenues for the government, both through direct and indirect taxes. But how do you see all of that experience shaping his approach as the RBI governor? Dr. Goel.
Well, he has a lot of exposure to Indian macroeconomic policy and a lot of, let us say, knowledge of the government and how it works. And one of the factors that worked very well, just after the pandemic, India has been doing very well. And one of the factors that is responsible for this is very good coordination between the RBI and the government. So I think he will bring in that aspect also.
Dr. Ashima Goel, Ankur Mishra from Mumbai studio. Since you have been part of Monetary Policy Committee, that is why I will ask you one direct question. I have seen your views, how growth and inflation has worked. You would have seen 4:2 vote which was given in the last policy regarding pausing as far as the repo rate is concerned. Do you think the scenario will change when the new governor will take over?
See, I hope that he will carefully study what has worked in the past and then take a decision. I don't know him personally, so I don't know what his views are or how he will work. But, when you come into such a responsible position and something that affects every individual in the economy, literally, you have to really carefully consider. And I think that in India, we have a very good set of lessons of things that work. I personally believe that keeping a real interest rate below 1 worked well, in restraining inflation and leading to a good growth recovery. So I hope he internalizes these lessons and acts on them so that the economy can continue to do well.
Across to Madhavi Arora. Madhavi, always good to have you. Now, home buyers are going to be very high on expectations of a new RBI governor, whether or not he's going to provide relief or not. What do you think is going to happen under a new RBI governor this time?
So I don't think the policy challenges really change with the new governor at the helm. In fact, we're going to be seeing a new MPC altogether by January, right? Let's not forget that we also probably will see a new deputy governor, in the month of January, and we also have had, a new MPC external member committee in October. So I think we are looking at a very new MPC, as we enter the next year, and the problem is that this time around, even the challenges are very different. If you look at same period last year, the policy challenges are very, very different from what they are today. Sitting today, we are facing the entrenched state of India's stagflation. There's also, pretty much tricky timing with regard to how much the conventional rate cuts are going to be. There's also a very small window because global dynamics are getting extremely fluid. And on top of that, we're also seeing mounting pressures on the rupee. And of course, the intervention costs that RBI will have to keep in mind if they continue to intervene in the FX market in general. So all of these challenges were not even there same period last year. So as you enter CY25, not only do you have a very different composition of MPC, we also have very different challenges versus same period last year.
Madhavi, if you would have noticed in the last policy, one clear-cut message which RBI governor was giving was balancing between growth and inflation. Although MPC's mandate is towards inflation, but he mentioned this statement more than twice. I want to understand from you, what does it take to balance both the sides, especially when new governor is now going to take over?
These policy trade-offs are never too easy, right? You really have to sort of balance things out before taking a call in terms of your rate structure. So this time around, when the Reserve Bank governor, the RBI met, clearly they had very different challenges, as I was mentioning, right? The growth story has totally changed for worse. Inflation is remaining very sticky. So of course, they kept mentioning the growth aspect, and that is when they could sort of justify some easing in liquidity. And that is also sort of needed because they have understood that the rate cut window and timings are going to be very difficult and very tricky as we get into the next year. So as and when they're able to cut rates, if the liquidity is going to be comfortable in the system, which still will be tight, although as we end the year, but much better than what it would have been had there been no intervention by the RBI on CRR bit. If the liquidity is at least comfortable, as and when they're able to cut rate, the transmission is going to be quick and smooth. Any which way, as I said, the window to cut is very limited. And that is the key word, right? Because if you have limited time and window to cut, whatever cuts you are going to do, they should be able to transmit in the economy. And that's what he tried to sort of achieve by cutting CRR this time around. And of course, as I was mentioning, the pressure on rupee is mounting, right? Yeah. I mean, a conventional rate cut to some extent further pressurizes the rupee, in textbook definition.
Yes.
So I'm sure that they had to really weigh all of these costs and benefits of any kind of policy action. It's always a policy trade-off. It's never an easy bet for any policymaker.
But like you said, the situation right now is a little different. I want to take that across to Dr. Goel very quickly as well. Dr. Goel, in your understanding, the importance of fiscal measures to be in sync with monetary policy, how much more accentuated is it at this time, and how much is now the focus on the new RBI governor to do the task at hand in balancing growth and inflation?
Yeah, I believe fiscal measures are very important, especially acting on food inflation. They did a very good job just after the 3 years after the pandemic. But currently we are seeing these vegetable price spikes. So if they can, ensure that supply chains develop sort of longer-term solutions, so that there is no short-term pressure that they have to suddenly stop exports and etc. So I think if the RBI governor takes a position that you keep rates as low as are consistent with anchoring inflation expectations, because these spikes have been short-term, they don't last, so they don't affect, and they're not expected the expected inflation in summer is only 4%. That means there's room to cut rates. And if the RBI can cut rates, then MPC cuts rates, and then the government acts on this food inflation, I think we can recover the sort of high growth low inflation trajectory that we had in the last few years.
Right. I remember your last comment while being in Monetary Policy Committee, you had voted for 25 basis point cut. Now, I understand that a new Monetary Policy Committee is in place, but having gained that kind of experience, you know what kind of numbers are there, what would have been your vote considering the current economic challenges?
No, I would have voted for a cut because you can see that there is a cyclical slowdown in the economy. We're seeing urban consumption, we're seeing private investment, we're seeing manufacturing slowdown. All this points. So in my view, there is more room. There is room for the monetary policy to ease. There's room for fiscal ramping up the spending because during the election period, their spending had slowed. So there was sort of double kind of cyclical contractionary effects on the economy. Now, and the problem with this kind of slowdown is if it becomes persistent, then it becomes very difficult to reverse. So those cuts need to come quickly, and spending needs to ramp up, as well as action on the supply side, such as these food prices, where fiscal measures can be more effective. Yeah.
Dr. Goyal, you've got experience on the Monetary Policy Committee in terms of working with a governor who is a technocrat versus a bureaucrat. How much easier does the task get of getting, like in this instance, we're trying to figure out how quickly these rate cuts can happen. How do you think that works differently under a technocrat governor and a bureaucrat governor?
I think that does not matter as much as having an open mind and being willing to learn from, being able to see what is important, what needs to be given more weight, because it is a very complex economy and there are all sorts of forces, global forces as well. So I think one of your guests was talking about the rupee being under pressure, but we are seeing that reverse. And one of the things that the RBI did very well over the last few years is reduce the volatility of the currency, which brought down risk premiums and interest rate spreads, even while deepening the foreign exchange market. So, that is the way to, and we are seeing the inflows return now. After October, November, there were outflows. The markets start worrying that this could be persistent, but it's reversed. And we have seen that all through these various external shocks. There are outflows and then they come back. And so you can use your reserves to smooth, the effect on the rupee, while the rupee depreciates according to inflation differentials so that there is no real misalignment. The real exchange rate is such as supports exports and so on. So there are very complex decisions to take and understand. The RBI has a lot of tools and they have a very sort of professional and depth in research. So I think, I remember when Dr. Subba Rao had joined as governor, he said, well, these people do everything. So I think I wish Mr. Sanjay Malhotra the best. I think he has a good team, support team, but he has to sort of also decide for himself. And there, I think his ability to learn on his feet, and he'll have a lot of pressures from the media, from expectations in the economy, and expectations for a turnaround, as well as restraining inflation. So it's a tough time.
The challenges are there and he needs to perform on that. Let's also welcome one more guest on the panel. Mithali, welcome to the ongoing discussion which we are doing on the new RBI governor. One of the suggestions per se, has Ashima Goyal been there in the Monetary Policy Committee, she would have voted for cut. Now let's take all permutation combinations and let's be fair. Even in this policy, 4:2, the External members were favoring rate cut. However, the internal members of Reserve Bank of India might have been favoring the status quo. That is anybody's guess. I want to understand now, does it look the safe bet that in the February policy, we may see a cut from Reserve Bank of India?
So thanks a lot for including me in the discussion. And, hi, Vikram. I think
Hi.
this is exactly what we were discussing,
Yes.
a few days ago when the announcements came in. And I was so happy to hear Dr. Ashrama just now talking about, the rate cuts, because I think even on that day, we were discussing that with the GDP outlook coming out at 5.4% in Q2, and, with the inflation numbers coming in somewhere within the range of 4 to 6%, just slightly exceeding 6%. But, with the employment considerations versus the growth considerations coming in, it was fairly clear, when we were discussing that the conditions were ripe for a rate cut. And now I think definitely the RBI has a little more time. They've looked at the situation, they've continued with the neutral policy stance. But now I think the new MPC and the new leadership really has the time to decide, what the direction of interest rates should be, whether it should be a rate cut, whether it should be, looking at more of a, how deep that rate cut can be. So I think we have to really look at these things, but definitely my expectation, even in this particular meeting, was of a rate cut. And I continue to hold the expectation that in February, we should be seeing a rate cut.
Well, you have union ministers also asking for it, not least of which is the finance minister as well, who says that these interest rates need to be more affordable for business expansion. But you also tell us, Madhavi, markets are already speculating about how soon we could see a rate cut under the new tenure of 3 years for the RBI governor this time. What are you expecting the markets to do now in terms of being able to control the expectations from the new RBI governor?
So I don't think that anything changes. I already discussed that bit. It's a very, very tricky call in terms of how deep the rate cut trajectory could actually go. We're not in the scenario as we were in 2024 when the world was looking at a massive rate cut by the US Fed, which could have lent some support to the emerging market in terms of them being able to cut rates as well. As I said, as we stand today, the policy pressures are very, very different. February is a very close call. Possible, yes. Whether we'll see streams of rate cuts after February, we'll have to again see. And that's exactly why a CRR cut was important, because as and when the RBI cuts, they're able to immediately transmit the rate cut impact into the system. So that was why they probably did the CRR cut. But, the trade-offs are going to be very acute, and it won't be an easy call for the RBI because the pressure is, as I said, also mounting on the rupee, and the conventional rate cut route is getting more difficult. So I think you should watch out for other avenues like easing regulatory norms in certain segments on the banking and non-banking bit, where there could be, some breathing space, which could lead to credit growth being respurred. We'll have to see all of that also play out, other than just the conventional rate cut route. I think that needs to be very closely seen. But that said, otherwise for the Reserve Bank, it's going to be a very different new year. A new committee, new challenges, new costs and benefits with regard to the policy choices. So I think we'll have to see how it really plays out. I mean, it's going to be.
But what about the role of a banking regulator, Dr. Goel? The RBI in recent times has been stricter, hasn't it? I mean, whether it's about housing finance companies, the importance of following KYC procedures, increasing that promoter stake requirements in banks for getting bank licenses. You think that path is going to be followed by the new governor as well?
That he will have to take a call, but my own view is that some of this tightening was prudential, in the sense it, for example, the credit card loans, there was very rapid growth, 32%. Now it's very well established in the literature that a very sharp credit rise, when then people don't evaluate risks correctly, and it normally blows up. So, but the choice was that if you tighten for credit card loans or selectively where you see there's too much exuberance, then you have room to be softer in the aggregate, right? That is a substitute. So unfortunately what happened was everything was done together. The monetary policy continued to be tight, fiscal policy was tightening, and regulatory tightening. So that has definitely played a role in slowing the economy. So I think that if your regulatory actions are concentrated in sectors where you see some overheating, that gives you some room to relax on aggregate in order to support investment cycle, recovery, etc. So that call the new governor will have to take.
Yes, indeed. But there are specific sectors like MSMEs and exports and credit growth, which are looking for a boost in the current economic environment, Madhavi. How is that likely to play out under the new RBI governor? Because certain sectors need that much more of a push, don't they?
Correct. So that's what I was saying. You probably would see some disproportionate help in certain segments rather than, having a policy which is essentially very conventional in nature. That could possibly be the case, yeah.
Our reporters are also standing by to give us the lowdown on the zeroing in of the new RBI governor. Let's quickly cut across to them before we continue this discussion. My colleague Prakash Priyadarshi is standing by in Delhi. Prakash, do fill us in on all that you've learned about the new RBI governor.
Yeah, of course, it's a very surprising element, and having said that, this government believes in giving surprises. At this time, again, Sanjay Malhotra is a quite surprise element. But of course, I would say that he could be best bet for the government and could be a bridge between RBI and government going forward. For the second time in a row, he is someone who is being sent from North Block to RBI. Let's delve into his rich experience. He has very vast experience working in the states and as well as at the center. He served his duties in various roles in the state government before appointed as a chairman at REC. He was also instrumental in shaping some of the best ideas to evolve and improve the finances of distribution companies, including Uday and some other schemes. After that, he was appointed as Secretary Department of Financial Services. Of course, he had an opportunity to work with the banks and financial institutions, of course, dealing with the RBI officials as well. So he has vast experience. Along with that, for last couple of years, he's dealing with the complex GST structure as the Revenue Secretary, dealing with the states, state finance ministers and the officials as well. And of course, had taken some bold decision when it comes to providing relief to the taxpayers and the businesses as well. So of course, he has vast experience. He has very good learner as well. He gives you patient hearing. His personality is very calm and composed. So he's the best bet, I could say. And back to you.
Yes, exactly. Let's also go across to Sumit, who has been covering him, Revenue Secretary, when Sanjay Malhotra was working. He has reported on GST issues. I want to understand, Sumit, since you would have seen Sanjay Malhotra working so many times, what kind of qualities or what kind of personality which would have suited for RBI governor? Was that the criteria for him being chosen, or his personality of silently working has worked in his favor?
Well, there are many pluses to his credit. Beginning with the first of his personality. Well, that's a very calm and very composed, very, we can say that in a typed manner or disciplined manner. We have always walked into his cabin, spoken to him. He comes across as an intelligent bureaucrat who always keeps things to himself. So it's a very, we can say that a person who would be doing works silently in his own core, and that's what is needed. One important thing we must not forget is that he has an IT background. He's a technocrat as well. So in a world where AI is fast shaping the world, we have seen scams coming, we have seen IT impacting the core of the financial services. His background in IT will be of much use. Definitely, he's coming. He has other skills as well, other qualifications as well. But his qualification, being from an IT background, also counts a lot in all that manner. That is something which is his professional and personal thing as well. So that is one thing which is going to stand him apart from other candidates also here. But yes, he has worked in GST councils. He has worked there. He has been instrumental in getting good collections as far as GST is concerned. So he knows the finances of the government in and out, where the cash comes from. So that is one thing that is going to be in his favor as well. Definitely inflation there. He knows the stuff in and out. Macro economy, he knows there as well. These are all things which will go in his favor. But in personality, yes, his own personality is different. IT background and then macro picture here, which he understands. This is all going to bring a lot of heft, a lot of depth to the post of RBI Governor.
Thanks very much, Prakash and Sumit, for filling us in, and it gives us a different kind of perspective on the new RBI governor. Dr. Ashima Goel, if she's still with us, your quick take, because Shaktikanta Das, as governor, has created a legacy of his own. In fact, he was one of the front runners if he would have got that extension, but it turns out to be Sanjay Malhotra. Tell us, in terms of style and in terms of approach to tackle the big issues that the economy requires at this time, what does Mr. Malhotra really bring to the table, according to you?
Well, as I said, I don't really know him, but given his experience and his understanding of the government and close connections there, so that aspect of cooperation between the Reserve Bank and the government, which worked very well in the past few years, should continue. And we must credit Mr. Shaktikant Das for really ensuring a very high level of interaction and good relations between the two, which had been spoiled in the earlier regime. And also he handled very, very difficult situations, the pandemic, the Ukraine war, all kinds of problems very well. On the whole, the economy did very well, very good recovery, and he was very good at listening and interacting with the media. And I don't know about Mr. Sanjay Malhotra, because in the IAS you don't really interact with the media very much. But as a governor, you have to interact with financial market participants, with all kinds of questions you have to face. And I don't know if he will. I hope he will be able to sort of.
Yes, but to work in close sync, that's the important part. And Madhavi, your quick take on this, because like Dr. Ashima Goel is pointing out, that it's very important that he works in sync with the government, and as far as their measures go to be able to boost growth. How important a piece is that right now, and how much does Sanjay Malhotra, with his background, ensure this?
It's very difficult to say without knowing much about him on that front. But as Dr. Goel also mentioned, that since he's been, a bureaucrat last 33 years of his life, I understand that, he's got a very thick connect to the North Bloc. And of course, it is very important to have a coordinated monetary and fiscal policy that obviously leads to better optimization of policy making in general. So we'll have to see how that pans out. It's too early to really speculate and, ideate and multiply thoughts on those fronts. I don't think it's the right time to really know exactly as to what he's going to do with regard to his policy stand, because the challenges on the monetary and fiscal fronts could be very different as well. But it generally, it augurs well for the economy when both the sides are on the same page.
Mithali, one thing I want to understand from you, one of the part where under the last governor's tenure, and I'm talking about Shaktikanta Das, communication has been quite clear. In fact, before any policy, it was anybody's guess what will happen in the next policy. You have seen 10 times in a row, there was no change, and it happened as per expectation. There were no surprises. In fact, even on CRR hike front, the expectation was there of 50 bips hike, and it happened. So I want to understand in that part, Governor has been emphasizing the communication should be proper to the stakeholders. Do you think in the new tenure of when Sanjay Malhotra takes over, this continuity might be there?
So actually, I had a opportunity to attend an event with Mr. Malhotra just 2 weeks ago, where he was speaking at a conference that was organized by the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, which he also headed, in his tenure and in his position as Revenue Secretary. And he made it very clear that, his priority was to look at trade financing, was to look at financing for the working capital of the MSME sector, was to look at financing for inclusion. I mean, he spoke about the fact that, working capital for women-led entrepreneurs was a challenge, and that was something that he was committed to solving. So he did make some of his policy stances quite clear at that event. And, we were really discussing with him later as well as to how what's the best way to actually make this happen, because there's a lot of coordination that is required with the private sector and with banks for actually bridging these financing gaps. And he also made it very clear in his statements that, inflation is actually a product of a lot of these liquidity barriers continuing. And it was definitely his vision that he articulated.
Yes.
That, this is how we can actually solve for inflation. So I think, to answer your question very clearly, definitely communication is something I do expect with this regime should in fact improve even further.
So that's an important piece as well. That much more transparency, that much more openness in communicating what exactly the RBI is considering and acting on is really going to help the cause of all those who are watching the Indian economy. And of course, there are so many stakeholders, and the expectations of the RBI from the RBI have just gotten that much more higher. Dr. Goyal, Madhavi Arora, Mithali, always a pleasure getting your perspectives. Thank you for joining us with that. Sanjay Malhotra's appointment opening this new chapter for the RBI at a critical juncture for India's economy. And whether he steers a cautious course or takes bold measures, now that remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, his leadership is going to play a pivotal role in shaping India's monetary and fiscal stature, right?
Definitely, it's all about taking the baton high and rising with India.
Well, whether or not he does that very quickly or not is going to be something we'll be watching and reporting on very closely. We'll take a small breather. We'll be back with much more on the flip side. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.